My name is Stan, and 3 years ago I worked as a night guard in an old, abandoned theater in Chicago. The building was constructed in the early 1900s and had a notorious reputation. Rumor had it that a fire had broken out there long ago, killing several performers. I always thought it was just a legend, but that night made me reconsider. During my usual rounds, I made sure all the doors were locked. Around 3 in the morning, I heard strange sounds coming from the auditorium. It was like faint whispers and footsteps. I thought it might be a homeless person who had somehow sneaked in, so I went to check. When I entered the hall, I was enveloped by an icy chill. In the dim light, I saw a woman standing on the stage, dressed in an old-fashioned gown. She stood completely still, staring right at me, but her face was shrouded in darkness. I froze, feeling chills run down my spine. I blinked, and the figure vanished, but the freezing cold lingered. I tried to convince myself it was just fatigue playing tricks on me, but then I heard a whisper behind me. Turning around, I saw the same woman, but this time her face was twisted in a grotesque grimace of terror. Without thinking, I bolted out of the theater and resigned the next day. I still have nightmares about that place. This happened 2 years ago. My name is Alex. I live in Mexico, and my family owns an old estate built in the late 19th century. One summer my parents went away for a few days, leaving me alone in the house. I usually enjoyed the solitude, but that time something felt different. Around midnight, I heard someone quietly walking down the corridor on the second floor. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the sound was too clear, like heavy footsteps. I grabbed a flashlight and went to check it out. As I reached the top of the stairs, I saw a shadow flicker around the corner. I called out, but no one answered. When I returned to my room, I was hit by a strange burning smell, like something was smoldering. In the corner of the room stood a man wearing an old hat, his eyes glowing faintly red. I was paralyzed with fear, and could only watch as he slowly approached me. Suddenly, he vanished into thin air, and the room returned to its usual state. The next day, I told my mother, and she confessed that she had seen the same figure years ago, but didn't want to scare me. Since then, I've made sure never to stay in that house alone. My name is Leon, and last summer, my friends and I decided to have a sleepover at an old cottage in the Scottish Highlands. The place was surrounded by dense forest, and it was rarely visited. We arrived in the evening, set up a campfire, and began telling each other ghost stories. None of us could have imagined that we were about to experience something truly terrifying. Around midnight, Jake suddenly went silent and stared into the forest. He claimed he had seen a shadow moving between the trees. At first, we thought it was just a joke, but a few minutes later, we heard the sound of children's laughter coming from the darkness. It was strange since there were no houses nearby for miles. We decided to go back inside, but throughout the night, someone kept knocking on the windows. We could hear footsteps circling the cottage, but every time we checked, no one was there. By morning, we were all exhausted and terrified. We left as soon as daylight broke, vowing never to return. My name is Aisha, and a few years ago, I worked as a nurse at a hospital in Dubai. On our floor there were rumors of a ghostly little girl who appeared at night. I always dismissed it as mere gossip until one night I encountered it myself. It was around 3 in the morning, and I was on duty in the intensive care ward. I was filling out some reports when suddenly the lights began to flicker. I looked up and saw a girl in a white dress standing at the end of the hallway. She was facing away from me, whispering something softly. I walked closer and called out to her, but she vanished instantly. That night, I couldn't focus on my work. In the morning, I told one of the senior nurses about it, and she said many staff members had seen the same girl. They say she died years ago due to a medical error and has been wandering the halls ever since, seeking justice. Since then, I never stay at the hospital alone at night. This happened 5 years ago. My name is Thomas, and I'm from Australia. One day, my friend Mike and I decided to go hiking in a national park. We camped in a secluded spot far from any tourist trails. That night, as we sat by the fire, I noticed that the forest around us had become eerily quiet. Not a single bird or animal could be heard. When Mike went off to gather some firewood, I started hearing whispers coming from deep within the forest. I thought it was him coming back, but when I turned around, no one was there. Then, I saw a tall, dark figure standing just at the edge of the firelight. It was unnaturally thin, and its face was completely hidden in shadow. I called out for Mike, but instead of him, the figure began gliding towards me, as if it were floating above the ground. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it directly at it, but it vanished instantly, as if it had never been there. When Mike returned, he said he had heard strange voices while gathering wood. We quickly packed up and left that place. To this day I have no idea what it was, but I've never camped in the wilderness since. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to listen to more stories.